town buried in secrets. Roman Hayden's calloused hands gripped the wrench tighter as he heard the familiar sound of tires crunching gravel outside his garage. Through the open bay door, he watched Mrs. Thompson's Mercedes roll to a stop, its engine making that distinct rattling noise he'd warned her about 3 months ago. "I should have listened to you sooner, Roman," she said, stepping out in her shoes. "Think you can fix it? Depends on how long you ignored the problem." His voice carried no judgment, just facts. He wiped his hands on a rag and approached the vehicle. Popped the hood. As he inspected the engine, his mind wandered to the day Glinda had first pulled into this same spot, her old Honda spewing smoke. She'd worn a simple sundress then, nothing like the expensive clothes she paraded around in now at Randall Sawyer's mansion. "How bad is it?" Mrs. Thompson's voice pulled him back to the present. "Timing belt shot. Could have seized your engine." He straightened up. 800, parts and labor. "I'll have it done by tomorrow afternoon. That's half what the dealership quoted me." She smiled, relief evident in her voice. "I don't believe in overcharging." Roman grabbed his clipboard. "Just honest work for honest pay." As Mrs. Thompson signed the paperwork, the bell above the office door chimed. Max, Roman's German shepherd, lifted his head from his bed in the corner but remained silent, recognizing the visitor. "Hey, Roman." Perry Hansen's familiar bulk filled the doorway. "Got a minute?" Roman nodded to Mrs. Thompson as she left, then turned to his friend. "What's on your mind?" Perry shifted uncomfortably, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "This came to the hardware store by mistake. Well, you should see for yourself." Roman took the envelope, his expression hardening as he recognized the expensive paper and flowing script. Inside was an invitation to Glinda and Randall's wedding, complete with a handwritten note. "You deserve to see what you lost." The paper crumpled in his grip. "She always did have a mean streak. You're not actually thinking of going?" Perry leaned against the counter, concern etched on his weathered face. "You know something." It wasn't a question. Roman had known Perry since high school. He could read his tells. Perry ran a hand through his graying hair. "I've been meaning to tell you. I saw her last week, behind Elder's bar." She wasn't alone. "Randall?" "Ernest Elder himself." Perry pulled out his phone, showing Roman several photos. They looked intimate. Roman studied the images. Glinda pressed against the bar's back wall, Ernest's hands where they shouldn't be, their faces close enough to share breath. "How long have you been watching them?" "About a month. Started noticing patterns. She goes there Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, always leaves before sunset." Roman's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Keep the photos. I might need them." "Roman." Perry hesitated. "What are you planning?" "Nothing yet." He turned back to Mrs. Thompson's Mercedes, grabbing his tools. But Glinda always wanted to be the center of attention. Maybe it's time to give her what she wants. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of oil changes and brake jobs. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Roman locked up the garage and headed home, Max trotting faithfully beside him. Their house sat on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, just a simple ranch-style home with good bones and a solid foundation. Unlike the McMansion Glinda now called home, he remembered the day she'd left, her cruel words echoing in their kitchen. "I'm suffocating here, Roman. You're so content with this mediocrity. Don't you want more from life?" "I want honest things," he'd replied. "Things I've earned. Well, I want more. And Randall can give it to me." Now, 2 years later, Roman sat on his porch, nursing a beer as Max sprawled at his feet. The invitation lay on the table beside him, its elegant paper catching the last light of day. In the distance, he could see the lights of Randall's mansion on the hill, glittering like a false promise. His phone buzzed. Perry again. "You're not going to believe this." His friend's voice crackled through the speaker. "Guess who just walked into Elder's bar?" Roman checked his watch. 8:45 p.m. Glinda's breaking routine. Better. Randall just arrived. They're all in there. Glinda, Ernest, and the man she's supposed to marry. A cold smile crossed Roman's face. "Keep watching. I want to know every move they make." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time Willow Creek learned what happens when you try to bury the truth." Roman finished his beer. And what happens when you betray the wrong person? The conversation ended, but Roman's mind raced with possibilities. He'd built his life on patience and precision. Fixing cars required both. Now he'd use those same skills to dismantle the web of lies Glinda had woven around herself. Inside, he pulled out an old lockbox from under his bed. It contained memories from his marriage, photos, letters, and something else, a small notebook filled with details about Glinda's past indiscretions. He'd started keeping records near the end, when suspicion had replaced trust. Back then, he'd told himself it was paranoia. Now he knew better. Max whined softly, sensing his master's dark mood. "It's all right, boy." Roman scratched behind the dog's ears. "We're just getting started." He spent the next hour making calls, reaching out to old contacts who owed him favors. One name kept coming up, Zach Ramsey, a former classmate who'd turned his hacking hobby into a legitimate security business. If anyone could help Roman gather evidence, it would be Zach. As midnight approached, Roman stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the town that had witnessed his humiliation. Soon, they'd witness something else entirely. Glinda wanted to make him attend her wedding? Fine. He'd be there. And he'd bring hell with him. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. Roman arrived at his garage early, mind focused on the task ahead. He'd barely unlocked the door when a familiar voice called out, "Roman? Got a minute?" He turned to find Sarah Chun, owner of the local diner, hurrying across the street. Her expression spelled trouble. "What's wrong?" "It's Glinda. She was at the diner last night with Ernest Elder, making quite a scene." Sarah glanced around before continuing. They were arguing about money, something about payments and promises. Ernest kept saying he'd take care of it before the wedding. Roman's expression remained neutral, but his mind filed away the information. "Thanks for letting me know. There's more." Sarah bit her lip. Randall came in right after they left. He was drunk, rambling about how his father's threatening to cut him off if he goes through with the wedding. Said something about Glinda being damaged goods. Perfect. The pieces were falling into place faster than Roman had anticipated. He spent the morning working on cars, his actions automatic while his mind plotted. Around noon, Zach Ramsey called. "Got those security cameras you asked about," Zach said without preamble. "High-end stuff, totally untraceable. When do you want them installed?" "Tonight. Elder's Bar has a blind spot in the back alley. Start there." "You sure about this, Roman?" "Once we start, there's no going back." Roman thought about the invitation, about Glinda's smug note. "I'm sure. Get it done." The day progressed, each hour bringing new information through Roman's network of contacts. By closing time, he had a clear picture of the players in this drama. Glinda, juggling relationships with both Randall and Ernest. Randall, drowning in debt despite his family's wealth, and Ernest, using his bar as a front for less legal enterprises. That night, as he reviewed Zach's first batch of surveillance footage, Roman allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The camera had captured Glinda and Ernest in a heated embrace, their conversation picked up by sensitive microphones. "What about Randall?" Ernest's voice was thick with desire. "He's a means to an end." Glinda's laugh was cruel. "Once we're married, his money is as good as ours. And Daddy Dearest won't be able to stop it." Roman switched off the footage, his path clear. He'd attend the wedding, all right, but first, he had a meeting to arrange with Edward Albert, Randall's disapproving father. The old man deserved to know exactly what kind of woman his son planned to marry. Max padded over, resting his head on Roman's knee. Outside, Willow Creek slept, unaware of the storm brewing in their midst. Roman scratched his dog's ears, his voice soft but determined. "They're about to learn, boy. Nobody betrays us and walks away clean. Nobody." Chapter 2. Seeds of Revenge. The security footage played on Roman's laptop, its blue glow illuminating his focused expression. Ernest's bar appeared on screen, the timestamp showing 2:43 a.m. A figure moved through the back entrance, Zach Ramsey, installing the last camera. Signals clean, Zach's voice crackled through Roman's earpiece. "You'll have eyes and ears on everything that happens in that alley." "Good." Roman leaned back in his chair. "What about the other equipment?" "All set. I've got feeds from the bar's interior cameras too." Elder's security system was a joke to hack. Zach chuckled. Want me to set up the remote access now? Do it. Roman pulled up another window on his screen, displaying Edward Albert's private contact information. I've got another task for you after. Need everything you can find on Randall's finances. Already ahead of you there. Keys clicked rapidly on Zach's end. Man's drowning in debt. Multiple mortgages, failed investments, gambling losses at Elder's illegal games. He's burning through his trust fund faster than his daddy can replenish it. Perfect ammunition for the meeting Roman had planned. He'd chosen his moment carefully. Edward Albert would be at his country club tomorrow afternoon, alone in his private study as usual. The old man's routine was as predictable as clockwork. The next day, Roman dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, looking every inch the successful businessman. He drove his restored '67 Mustang to the country club, knowing appearances mattered in this world of old money and older prejudices. The club's security recognized him. He'd maintained their fleet of golf carts for years. They waved him through without question. Roman found Edward exactly where he expected, nursing a scotch in his book-lined sanctuary. "Mr. Albert," Roman's voice cut through the quiet. "We need to talk about your son's engagement." Edward looked up sharply, his weathered face showing surprise rather than anger. "How did you get in here?" "Same way your future daughter-in-law gets into Ernest Elder's back room." Roman placed a manila envelope on the desk. "The difference is, I'm here to prevent a disaster. She's just creating one." Edward's hand trembled slightly as he opened the envelope. Photos spilled out, Glinda with Ernest, transcripts of their conversations, bank statements showing suspicious transfers. Roman watched the older man's face darken with each new revelation. "These are authenticated?" "Every one." Roman sat without invitation. "Your son's being played, Mr. Albert. Glinda and Ernest have been planning this for months. They'll drain him dry, destroy your family's reputation, and disappear with everything they can grab." Edward took a long drink, his knuckles white around the glass. "Why show me this? Why not go to the police?" "Because you have more to lose than I do." Roman's voice hardened. "And because revenge tastes better when it's served by family." Hours later, Roman sat in his garage office, reviewing his plan. Edward had agreed to help, not out of kindness, but necessity. The Albert family name meant everything to him, and Glinda threatened to tarnish it beyond repair. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Perry, looking troubled. "Ernest's guys are asking questions around town," he said without preamble. "They're trying to dig up dirt on you." Roman smiled coldly. "Let them dig. My hands are clean." "That's not all." Perry lowered his voice. "They roughed up Tommy Chun at the diner when he wouldn't talk. Sarah's pretty shaken up." Roman's expression darkened. Tommy was just a kid, barely 17. Time to accelerate things. He pulled out his phone, dialing Zach. "How fast can you get those cameras live streaming?" "Give me an hour." "Why?" "Ernest likes to play poker. Let's show him what a real gambler looks like." That night, Roman watched through the surveillance feeds as Ernest conducted his illegal game. The cameras caught everything: marked cards, rigged deals, cash-changing hands under the table. Most importantly, they caught Glinda visiting between hands, whispering promises in Ernest's ear while his opponents lost thousands. Roman compiled the footage meticulously, building a case that would destroy both Ernest's operation and Glinda's carefully constructed facade. But he wasn't ready to use it, not yet. First, he needed to ensure maximum damage. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Roman gathered more evidence, made strategic alliances, and watched as his targets grew increasingly paranoid. Ernest's thugs became more aggressive, pressuring locals for information about Roman's activities. They didn't realize every threat, every act of intimidation, just added to the evidence pile. Finally, it was time for Phase 2. Roman drove to Edward's estate, where the old man waited with a team of high-powered lawyers. "Everything's in place," Edward announced. "The prenuptial agreement, the trust fund restrictions, the business audits. It's all ready. The moment they make a move, we'll have them." "And Randall?" Edward's face hardened. "My son needs to learn actions have consequences. Let him face the humiliation. Maybe then he'll grow up." Roman nodded, satisfied. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, Glinda would learn what happened to those who underestimated him. She'd thought him weak because he preferred honest work and simple living. She'd mistaken his patience for passivity. That night, as he worked late in his garage, Ernest himself showed up. The bar owner swaggered in, reeking of cheap cologne and expensive whiskey. "Heard you've been asking questions," Ernest slurred. "Making trouble. That's not healthy, Roman." Roman didn't look up from the engine he was working on. "Neither is stealing another man's wife." "Glenda came to me." Ernest stepped closer, trying to intimidate. "Said you couldn't satisfy her. Said you were too simple." Roman's hand tightened on his wrench. "Simple enough to install cameras in your bar? Simple enough to record every crooked game you've run?" The color drained from Ernest's face. "You're bluffing. Check your phone." Ernest pulled out his device. A video played him cheating at cards, accepting bribes, meeting Glenda in the back room. His hands shook. "This is just a taste," Roman said quietly. "Walk away now, or I'll bury you both." "You think you can threaten me?" Ernest's voice cracked. "I own this town."
No.
Roman finally turned, his eyes cold. "You just rent space here, and your lease is about to expire." After Ernest stumbled out, Roman made another call to Zach. "Start uploading the files. All of them." "You sure?" "Once this gets out." "That's the point." Roman watched through the window as Ernest's car swerved down the street. Time to show them what a simple man can do. Chapter 3. The Wedding Day. Morning light spilled across the manicured lawns of the Albert estate. Workers scurried about, setting up chairs and decorations for the afternoon ceremony. Roman watched from his parked car, noting the increasing tension among the staff. His phone buzzed. Edward Albert calling. "It's done," the older man said without greeting. "The evidence has been distributed to all the right people. Police, journalists, business associates. They're just waiting for my signal." "Good." Roman checked his watch. "Remember, timing is everything." "I haven't forgotten." Edward's voice hardened. "I've spent decades building this family's reputation. I won't let them destroy it." Roman ended the call, his mind drifting to the envelope in his jacket pocket. Inside were copies of bank statements showing Glenda's offshore accounts, records of her meetings with Ernest, proof of their planned deception. Each document represented another nail in her coffin. Guests began arriving, filling the gardens with expensive suits and dresses. Roman recognized faces from his past. People who'd whispered behind his back when Glenda left him, who'd smiled at his humiliation. Today, those smiles would fade. He made his way to the garden gazebo, where Edward waited. The older man looked distinguished in his tuxedo, but his eyes betrayed his anger. "The priest has been informed," Edward muttered. "He'll pause at the right moment." Roman nodded, scanning the crowd. He spotted Perry near the back, ready to record everything on his phone. Zach had hacked into the venue's security cameras, ensuring nothing would be missed. The wedding march began. Guests stood as Glenda appeared, radiant in white. Roman had to admit, she played her part well. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him, but she maintained her composure. The ceremony proceeded according to plan. The priest spoke of love and fidelity, each word dripping with irony. When he reached the crucial moment, "If anyone objects to this union," Edward rose. "I object." His voice boomed across the garden. "And I have proof of why this marriage cannot proceed." Chaos erupted. Randall jumped up, face red with anger. "Father, what are you doing?" "Saving you from yourself." Edward pulled out his phone, projecting images onto the large screen meant for wedding photos. "Look at your bride, son. Really look at her." The screen filled with surveillance footage. Glenda and Ernest in intimate embraces, planning their scheme, laughing about Randall's ignorance. Bank statements appeared, showing money movements between accounts. Finally, transcripts of their conversations played through the speakers. "He's just a stepping stone," Glenda's recorded voice echoed. "Once we're married, his money is ours." The color drained from Randall's face. He turned to Glenda, who had frozen in place. "Is this true?" "Randall, I can explain." She reached for him, but he recoiled. "Don't touch me." His voice shook. "The wedding's off." Guests began leaving in droves, phones already spreading the scandal across social media. Roman stayed put, watching as Glinda's perfect world crumbled around her. She spotted him then, fury replacing shock. You did this. You couldn't stand to see me happy. Happy? Roman's laugh was cold. You've never been happy, Glinda. You're just greedy. You think this changes anything? She stepped closer, voice low. I still won. I still left you in the dust. Did you? Roman pulled out one final envelope. Check your accounts. All of them. Glinda's hands trembled as she read the documents. Her offshore accounts drained. Her safety nets gone. Her face contorted with rage and fear. You can't do this. I already have. Roman's voice carried across the now empty garden. Leave Willow Creek, Glinda. Leave, or the next revelations will be much worse. Is that a threat? No. He turned to leave. It's a promise. Ask Ernest what happens to people who cross me. As Roman walked away, he heard her shout threats and accusations. But they meant nothing now. He'd shown everyone who she really was, shown them what happened when they mistook his quiet nature for weakness. Perry joined him at his car. That was something else. Never seen Glinda lose control like that. She never had control, Roman replied. She just thought she did. Later that night, Roman sat on his porch, Max at his feet. In the distance, the lights of Randall's mansion were dark. The evening news was already running stories about the scandal, about Ernest's illegal operations, about Glinda's schemes. His phone buzzed with a message from Edward. Thank you. The family name is saved, even if my son hates me. Roman didn't reply. His work was done, at least this phase of it. Glinda had learned what happened when you betrayed him, but the lesson wasn't over. Not yet. Max lifted his head, ears perking at a sound in the distance. Roman smiled, scratching behind the dog's ears. Don't worry, boy. We're just getting started. The night stretched on, quiet and dark. But in Willow Creek, nothing would ever be the same. Roman had shown them all. He wasn't just the simple mechanic they dismissed. He was the man who'd brought their carefully constructed lies crashing down. And he wasn't finished yet. Chapter 4. The Fallout. Ernest Elder's bar reeked of stale whiskey and desperation. Glinda slumped over her fourth drink, mascara streaking her cheeks. The wedding disaster had stripped away her polished veneer, revealing the bitter woman beneath. He'll pay for this, she spat, fingers tightening around her glass. That smug bastard thinks he's won. Ernest paced behind the bar, his usual swagger replaced by nervous energy. Keep your voice down. We need to think smart here. Think smart. Glinda laughed, harsh and hollow. Roman destroyed everything. The wedding, my reputation, my future with Randall. Our future, Ernest corrected, leaning close. Or did you forget about our plans? She glared at him. Hard to forget when they're splashed all over town. Your illegal poker games, our meetings. How did he get those recordings? Ernest's face darkened. Someone bugged my bar. My own damn bar. He slammed his fist on the counter, making Glinda jump. But we can still salvage this. How? We control the narrative. Ernest pulled out his phone, scrolling through local social media groups. People in this town love drama. They'll believe whatever story gets the most attention. Glinda straightened, understanding dawning in her bloodshot eyes. We paint Roman as the villain. Exactly. The bitter ex-husband who couldn't move on. The stalker who harassed an innocent woman. The man who manipulated Edward Albert with fake evidence. It won't work, a gravelly voice interrupted. They turned to find Randall Sawyer stumbling through the door, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained. My father verified everything. The bank records, the surveillance footage. It's all real. Randall. Glinda stood, swaying slightly. I can explain. Save it. He collapsed onto a bar stool, waving at Ernest for a drink. You played me for a fool. Both of you. Ernest set a whiskey in front of him, maintaining a cautious distance. Look, Randall, business is business. Nothing personal. Nothing personal? Randall's laugh was ugly. You had an affair with my fiancée and helped her plan to steal my money. Seems pretty personal to me. Keep your voice down, Ernest hissed, eyeing the few remaining patrons. Why? Afraid your other customers will hear about your rigged games? Randall downed his drink. Too late for that. Roman made sure everyone knows what kind of establishment you run. Glinda touched his arm. Randall, please. We can fix this. He jerked away as if burned. Fix what? My ruined reputation? My father's disappointment? The millions I've lost in business deals because no one trusts the Sawyer name anymore? We're all victims here, Ernest tried, but Randall cut him off. No, we're not. Roman played us like cheap cards in one of your rigged games. And the worst part, he stood, steadying himself against the bar. We deserved it. After Randall left, Glinda and Ernest sat in heavy silence. The bar had emptied, word of their presence driving away the regulars. Finally, Ernest spoke. We need to hit back. Hard. How? Glinda's voice was small, defeated. I know some guys. They owe me favors. Ernest's eyes gleamed dangerously. One phone call, and Roman's garage gets redecorated. Maybe with some broken windows, maybe with something worse. Glinda considered this, twirling her empty glass. He'll expect retaliation. Let him. Sometimes the obvious move is the right one. Ernest pulled out his phone. Besides, it sends a message. Nobody crosses Ernest Elder without consequences. The next morning, Roman arrived at his garage to find shattered glass glittering across the pavement. Spray paint marred the walls with crude insults and threats. Inside, tools lay scattered and broken. Perry whistled low, surveying the damage. Ernest's work? His style lacks subtlety. Roman stepped carefully through the mess, Max following at his heels. The dog growled at the lingering scent of intruders. Want me to call the cops? No. Roman's voice was cold, calculated. This is exactly what I expected. He pulled out his phone, dialing Zach's number. The security expert answered on the first ring. Already reviewing the footage, Zach reported. Got clear shots of 3 guys. Running facial recognition now. Send everything to my laptop. And Zach? Roman paused. Make sure the footage shows them entering from Ernest's bar. Within hours, the video spread across social media. Ernest's thugs, clearly identifiable, vandalizing an honest businessman's property. Public sympathy swung further in Roman's favor, while Ernest faced increasing scrutiny from law enforcement. Barbara Snow watched the footage from her diner's kitchen, her heart racing. She remembered Roman from years ago, before Glinda. He'd been quieter then, less hardened. Now she saw him differently, saw the steel beneath the surface. The bell above her door chimed. Speak of the devil. Coffee, she offered as Roman settled at the counter. Please. He glanced around the empty diner. Slow morning? People are scared. Barbara poured his cup. Ernest's guys have been throwing their weight around. Tommy's still sporting bruises. Roman's expression darkened. How is he? Angry. Scared. Trying not to show either. She hesitated. I've been meaning to tell you something. About Glenda. Go on. Last year, when I was still married to Jack, Barbara's hands trembled slightly. She knew what he was doing to me. The abuse, the control. She knew, and she told me I deserved it. Said I should be grateful any man wanted me. Roman's grip tightened on his cup. Why tell me this now? Because I want you to know you're not wrong. Barbara met his gaze steadily. Some people deserve what's coming to them. Their conversation was interrupted by commotion outside. Ernest stumbled down the street, clearly drunk despite the early hour. He spotted Roman through the diner's window and charged in. You son of a! Ernest swung wildly, but Roman was ready. The fight was brief and brutal. Ernest's drunken attacks met Roman's precise responses. When it ended, Ernest lay groaning on the diner floor, blood streaming from his nose. Consider this a warning, Roman said quietly. Next time won't be so gentle. Barbara watched him leave, understanding dawning. Roman wasn't just seeking revenge. He was dismantling a corrupt system piece by piece. And somehow, she'd become part of his plan. The next few days brought more revelations. Anonymous tips led police to evidence of Ernest's illegal gambling operation. Health inspectors discovered violations at his bar. Tax auditors began investigating his finances. Glinda, meanwhile, spiraled further. Her attempts to salvage her reputation backfired as more people came forward with stories of her manipulation and cruelty. Former friends distanced themselves, leaving her increasingly isolated. Roman watched it all unfold from his garage, now repaired and busier than ever. The vandalism had only increased community support. Even Tommy Chin stopped by, sporting a black eye but eager to learn about cars. "You're good at this," Tommy observed as Roman demonstrated an engine repair. "Teaching, I mean. Some people deserve a chance to learn." Roman handed him a wrench. "Others deserve to learn harder lessons." The deeper meaning wasn't lost on Tommy. He'd seen firsthand how Roman handled enemies, not with brute force, but that left them no room to escape. Later that night, Perry brought more news. "Ernest's trying to frame you for the Miller garage fire." Roman nodded, unsurprised. "Let him try. You knew he would. I counted on it." Roman pulled up surveillance footage on his laptop. "Watch." The video showed Ernest meeting with his thugs, planning the frame job in detail. Their voices were crystal clear, their intentions explicit. "This is going to destroy him," Perry realized. "That's the point." Roman's smile held no warmth. "Some men dig their own graves. I just make sure they lie in them." Chapter 5. Shadows Deepen. Glenda's hands shook as she poured another drink, spilling expensive scotch across her marble countertop. The mansion felt emptier now, its luxurious rooms taunting her with memories of the life she'd almost secured. "You're making a mess," Ernest growled from the doorway. His face was still bruised from his encounter with Roman, his ego even more damaged. "Like you haven't made enough of those?" She turned on him, eyes blazing. This was supposed to be foolproof. Marry Randall, secure the money, start fresh somewhere else. Instead, I'm trapped here watching everything fall apart. You think I'm happy about this? Ernest stalked closer. "My bar is being investigated. The poker games are finished. Even my regular customers won't look me in the eye anymore." "Poor Ernest," Glenda mocked. "Worried about your precious reputation? At least you still have a business." "I have nothing." Their argument escalated, voices echoing through empty halls. Neither noticed the small device blinking in the corner, another of Zach's cameras, recording every bitter word. Across town, Edward Albert sat in his study, watching the feed on his tablet. Roman sat opposite him, both men drinking aged bourbon as they observed their targets self-destruct. "She's unraveling faster than expected," Edward noted, his aristocratic features pulled into a frown. "And Ernest, he's dangerous when cornered." "That's the point." Roman set down his glass. "Pressure reveals true character. They're showing exactly who they are." "Randall won't speak to me," Edward admitted. "Says I betrayed him by exposing the truth. He'll understand eventually. Some lessons hurt more than others." Edward's phone buzzed, another crisis demanding attention. Roman left him to his family duties, driving back to his garage where Barbara waited. She'd been spending more time there lately, bringing food and conversation. Today, she looked troubled. "I need to tell you something," she said as Roman settled behind his desk. "Before Ernest's guys roughed up Tommy, I was helping Glenda." Roman's expression remained neutral, encouraging her to continue. "She asked me to spy on you. Said she'd help me divorce Jack if I reported your movements, your conversations with customers." Barbara's voice trembled. "I almost did it. But then I saw how she laughed when Ernest's thugs hurt Tommy. She enjoyed it." "Why tell me this now?" "Because you deserve to know who your allies are." She met his gaze. "And because I'm tired of being afraid." Roman studied her for a long moment. "Did you take any photos? Make any reports?" "No, I couldn't do it." She squared her shoulders. "I won't be like them." "Good." Roman's voice softened slightly. "Fear's a choice, Barbara. So is loyalty." Their conversation was interrupted by Perry bursting through the door. "Ernest's planning something big. Just intercepted a call. He's hired guys from out of town. Professional muscle." Roman nodded, unsurprised. "Zach? Already tracking them," Perry confirmed. 3 men, ex-military. They're staying at the Pine Motel. Keep watching. Let me know when they make a move." Roman turned back to Barbara. "You should go home. Things might get messy." She stood but hesitated. "Be careful. Ernest's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes." Roman's smile was sharp. "I'm counting on it." The next few days brought increased tension to Willow Creek. Ernest's new muscle made their presence known, intimidating locals and disrupting businesses. But they never touched Roman's garage, not yet. Glinda, meanwhile, attempted damage control. She scheduled interviews with local media, playing the victim card. But Roman had anticipated this move. Anonymous sources provided journalists with evidence of her past schemes, her manipulation of previous partners, her role in Ernest's illegal operations. Each revelation pushed her further into isolation. Her few remaining friends abandoned her, leaving only Ernest, and even he grew increasingly hostile. "You're poison," he snarled during another drunken argument. "Everything you touch turns to shit. You were happy enough to touch me when you thought we'd get Randall's money," she shot back. "Don't pretend you're any better." Their fights became public spectacles, recorded and shared across social media. Roman watched each new video spread, understanding how humiliation could break even the strongest facades. Edward called with updates on Randall. "He's drinking heavily, making scenes at clubs. The family name's becoming a joke." "Not your problem anymore," Roman reminded him. "You chose truth over appearances. Stand by that choice." But Ernest's desperation reached new heights. His hired muscle began targeting Roman's allies. Perry's hardware store was vandalized. Zach reported attempts to hack his systems. Barbara received threatening phone calls. Roman responded. Each act of intimidation was recorded, documented, and leaked to authorities. The out-of-town muscle found their criminal records exposed, their presence reported to parole officers. One by one, they abandoned Ernest, leaving him more isolated than ever. Chapter 6. Breaking Point. The charity gala was Glinda's last attempt at social redemption. She'd rented her mansion's ballroom to local organizations, promising generous donations to various causes. The guest list included Willow Creek's most influential citizens, assuming any would actually attend. Roman watched the preparations from his garage, where Perry and Barbara helped coordinate their response. "Flyers are ready," Perry reported, holding up a stack of glossy papers. Each detailed Glinda's history of manipulation, complete with testimonials from her victims. "These'll hit hard." "Security?" Roman asked. "Minimal," Barbara confirmed. "She can't afford professional guards anymore. Just a few of Ernest's regular thugs." "Perfect." Roman checked his watch. "Remember the timing. We wait until the cameras arrive." The gala began at sunset. A handful of guests trickled in, mostly curiosity seekers and social climbers desperate for any invitation. Glinda played hostess, her smile brittle as she greeted each arrival. Roman's team moved quietly through the crowd. Perry distributed flyers while Barbara engaged guests in quiet conversations, sharing personal stories of Glinda's cruelty. The whispers spread, faces turned away, and within an hour the ballroom began to empty. Glinda noticed too late. She rushed to stop guests from leaving, her composed facade cracking. "Please, you don't understand. These are lies." "Like you lied about helping me?" Barbara stepped forward, voice clear. "Like you lied to Randall, to Roman, to everyone who trusted you?" Reporters appeared, cameras rolling as Glinda's carefully orchestrated evening imploded. She spotted Roman near the entrance, his expression cold and satisfied. "You." She lunged at him, mascara streaking. "You've ruined everything." "No, Glinda." Roman caught her wrist easily. "You did that yourself." The scene played out across local news, the failed socialite's meltdown captured in high definition. But Roman wasn't finished. As Glinda retreated to her mansion, Zach launched the final phase of their plan. "Offshore accounts accessed," he reported via phone. "Moving funds now." Roman watched his laptop screen as millions disappeared from Glinda's secret accounts. Money she'd stolen from various lovers, including Randall, vanished into untraceable donations to legitimate charities. Ernest arrived at the mansion an hour later, drunk and raging. "You stupid. You've destroyed us both." Their argument spilled onto the front lawn, recorded by dozens of phones. Ernest revealed their entire scheme, confirming every accusation Roman had made. By morning, the videos were viral. Randall, watching from a cheap motel room, finally understood the full scope of their deception. He called his father, voice breaking. "You were right. About everything." Roman received the news from Edward with quiet satisfaction. The pieces had fallen perfectly into place. Ernest's bar faced closure, his illegal operations exposed beyond doubt. Glenda's reputation was destroyed, her wealth gone, her social connections severed. Barbara found Roman in his garage that night, working on an engine despite the late hour. It's done, isn't it? Almost. He wiped his hands on a rack. They still haven't learned their final lesson, which is that actions have consequences. Roman's voice was steel, and some debts can never be repaid. As if on cue, his phone buzzed with a message from Zach. Ernest had been caught on camera discussing plans to frame Roman for arson. The evidence was damning, irrefutable. Send it to the police, Roman instructed. All of it. The next morning, officers arrested Ernest outside his bar. The charges were numerous: attempted arson, conspiracy, assault, illegal gambling operations. His protests fell on deaf ears as he was led away in handcuffs. Glenda watched the arrest from her mansion's window, understanding finally hitting her. She was alone. No allies, no money, no future in Willow Creek. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Leave town. Never return. This is your only warning. She recognized Roman's style: direct, unbending, final. Within hours, she was gone, leaving behind only echoes of her deception. Roman stood outside his garage that evening, watching the sun set on a changed Willow Creek. Barbara joined him, her presence comfortable in the growing dark. "What now?" she asked. "Now." Roman's smile held no warmth. "Now they understand what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness. The town would recover, he knew, but it would never forget the lesson he'd taught them all. That betrayal carried a price, and Roman Hayden always collected his debts. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The cabin stood isolated among dense trees, far from Willow Creek's prying eyes. Inside, Glenda paced the confined space, her clothes dirty and wrinkled. 24 hours had passed since she'd followed the trail of breadcrumbs Roman had laid. Documents hinting at hidden millions, coordinates leading to this remote location. Her phone lay useless on the table, no signal bars in sight. The cabin's windows, reinforced with steel bars, mocked her attempts at escape. Each hour trapped inside stripped away another layer of her carefully constructed facade. Through hidden cameras, Roman observed her deterioration from his garage office. Barbara stood behind him, watching the feeds with a mixture of horror and satisfaction. "How long will you keep her there?" she asked. "Until the lesson sinks in." Roman's voice carried no emotion. 3 days should do it. The cameras caught Glenda's increasing desperation. She'd already ransacked the cabin's sparse furnishings, searching for anything useful. Now she sat in a corner, talking to herself, jumping at shadows. "You're not worried she'll hurt herself?" Perry asked, bringing coffee. "The cabin's designed to prevent that." Roman switched camera views. "Besides, physical pain isn't the point. This is about breaking her mind." In the cabin, Glenda's composure continued crumbling. Memories haunted her, faces of those she'd betrayed, lives she'd ruined for personal gain. Without distractions or escape routes, she faced her true reflection for the first time. "I get it now," she screamed at the walls, knowing Roman must be watching. "You've made your point." But no response came. The cabin remained silent except for her ragged breathing and occasional sobs. Meanwhile, Roman's surveillance network tracked Ernest's situation in prison. The former bar owner's attempt to maintain his tough image had backfired spectacularly. Other inmates, hearing rumors he'd cooperated with authorities, made his life increasingly difficult. "Latest report from my contact inside," Zach's voice crackled through Roman's speaker. "Ernest got jumped in the yard yesterday. Nothing fatal, but he won't be showing that pretty face in public for a while. Any signs he'll try to talk? He's scared. The guys who jumped him made it clear. One word about your involvement in anything, and next time they won't stop at bruises." Roman nodded, satisfied. He'd chosen his allies carefully, ensuring Ernest would have no safe haven, even behind bars. Barbara approached Roman's desk, her expression troubled. "There's something you should know. Before all this started, Ernest tried to blackmail me. He had photos of me meeting with Jack, threatening to tell you I was conspiring with my ex-husband." "I know." Roman didn't look up from his monitors. "You think I didn't investigate everyone in my circle?" The photos were staged. Ernest hired Jack to approach you, thinking he could use your past against us. Why didn't you say anything? Because you needed to choose sides on your own. Now he met her gaze. Fear makes people predictable. Freedom to choose makes them reliable. Their conversation paused as movement on the cabin feeds caught their attention. Glinda had found paper and pen, writing frantically. A confession, Roman noted, zooming the camera. Let's see what truth's isolation brings out. The page is filled with admissions of guilt, not just about her schemes with Ernest and Randall, but years of manipulation and theft. Names, dates, amounts stolen, lives destroyed. Each revelation confirmed what Roman had already known. Glinda's corruption ran deep. Send copies to the relevant authorities, he instructed Zack. Anonymous tips about her other victims. Let them start building cases. Perry whistled low. You're not just running her out of town. You're making sure she has nowhere to run to. She chose her path. Roman's voice hardened. Now she'll walk it to the end. In the cabin, Glinda's writing became more frantic. She detailed her relationship with Roman, admitting how she'd planned to bleed him dry from the beginning. Her marriage had been a long con, their divorce a calculated move to position herself for bigger targets. The confession continued through the night. By morning, Glinda had filled dozens of pages with her sins. The woman who emerged from this outpouring was unrecognizable, stripped of pretense, facing the monster she'd become. Please, she whispered to the empty room. I understand now. Let me out. But Roman wasn't finished. 2 more days passed, each hour grinding away another piece of Glinda's sanity. She hallucinated conversations with her victims, argued with phantoms of her past selves. Barbara watched the transformation with growing unease. This is breaking her completely. That's the point. Roman's eyes never left the screens. Some people only learn through complete destruction. She wanted to be the center of attention. Now she has nowhere to hide from herself. On the 3rd day, movement stirred near the cabin. A hiker, exactly as Roman had arranged, discovered the location. Within hours, emergency services arrived, finding Glinda in a state of near collapse. News of her ordeal spread quickly through Willow Creek. But instead of sympathy, her confession pages circulated online, each revelation damning her further. Former friends and associates came forward with their own stories of her betrayals. Roman watched from his garage as ambulances carried Glinda away. She caught sight of him as they loaded her into the vehicle, her eyes wild with recognition and fear. You'll never prove anything, she croaked. I don't need to. His voice carried across the space between them. Your own words are enough. The ambulance doors closed on her desperate face. Roman turned back to his work, but Barbara lingered. What happens to her now? Now? Roman's smile held no warmth. Now she learns what it means to lose everything. Not just money or status, but her entire identity. The confession she wrote opens investigations across 3 states. Her victims will take what's left. And Ernest? Prison has its own justice system. Roman picked up a wrench, returning to the engine he'd been fixing. He chose his allies poorly. Those choices have consequences. As if to emphasize his point, Zack's latest report arrived. Ernest had been moved to solitary confinement for his own protection. His attempts to bribe guards had backfired, turning even his potential protectors against him. The day ended with Roman at his usual spot on the porch, Max at his feet. Barbara joined him, 2 coffee cups in hand. The town's changing, she observed. People look at you differently now. Good. They should understand what happens when they cross the wrong person. His phone buzzed. Edward Albert calling with news. Randall had checked into rehab, finally facing his demons. The family name might recover, given time. Roman ended the call, his mind already moving to next steps. Glinda and Ernest were finished, but their downfall had revealed other corrupt players in Willow Creek. More lessons waited to be taught. Barbara sensed his thoughts. It's not over, is it? Justice isn't a destination. Roman's voice carried the weight of experience. It's a process. Some people need reminding what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness. The night deepened around them, but Roman's work continued. In his office, files waited, evidence of other betrayals, other debts to be collected. Willow Creek had learned its first lesson. More would follow. Chapter 8. Justice Served. The hospital corridor stretched long and sterile as Roman approached Glinda's room. 3 days of observation had deemed her physically stable, but her mental state remained fragile. Security guards nodded to Roman. He'd arranged special access through Edward's connections. Glinda sat propped up in bed, restraints on her wrists. The sight of Roman triggered visible panic. "No, no, no," she muttered, shrinking back. "You can't be here." "But I am." He settled into the visitor's chair. "We need to discuss your future." "Future?" Her laugh verged on hysteria. "You destroyed my future. My reputation, my money, my freedom. What else could you possibly take?" "Your delusions." Roman placed a folder on her bed. "Your confession mentioned other victims. Police are very interested in speaking with them." Color drained from Glinda's face. "Those weren't confessions. I was hallucinating, desperate. Nobody will believe." "They already do." He opened the folder, showing her news articles. 5 investigations opened in 3 states. Your previous marks are coming forward, eager to testify. You planned this. The cabin, the isolation. You knew I'd break. Everyone breaks, Glinda. The trick is making sure they shatter in useful ways. Tears streaked her cheeks, but Roman felt no pity. He remembered her cruelty, her calculated betrayals, her joy in others' pain. "What do you want from me?" "Leave Willow Creek. Never return. If you do." He stood, towering over her bed. "Next time won't be a cabin in the woods. It'll be somewhere much darker, much more permanent." Her eyes widened at the implication. "You wouldn't. Try me." He left her sobbing, passing nurses who pretended not to notice. Outside, Barbara waited in his car. How'd she take it? "Like you'd expect." Roman started the engine. Self-pity, denial, then fear. "She'll run as soon as they release her." And Ernest? As if on cue, Roman's phone buzzed with an update from his prison contact. Ernest had been attacked again, this time in the shower. Nothing fatal, but the message was clear. No place was safe. They drove to the garage, where Perry waited with news from town. Randall had given a newspaper interview, publicly apologizing for his role in recent events. He admitted to gambling problems, drug use, and poor judgment in his personal relationships. "Smart move," Roman noted. "Edward's influence at work." Speaking of influence, Perry handed over a tablet. "Look who's trying to make a comeback." The screen showed Glinda's latest attempt at damage control, an interview she'd given from her hospital bed, painting herself as Roman's victim. Her story painted him as the obsessed ex-husband, claiming the cabin incident was attempted murder. Roman's response was immediate. "Zach, release the cabin footage. All of it." Within hours, videos flooded social media. Glinda's paranoid rants, her detailed confessions, her admissions of guilt. Public opinion, briefly swayed by her hospital interview, turned sharply against her. Local news stations ran special reports on her crimes. Former victims came forward, sharing stories that matched her confessed schemes perfectly. Each revelation drove another nail into her coffin. "She never learns," Barbara observed, watching the coverage. "Even now, she thinks she can spin this. Some people can't face their true reflection." Roman closed his laptop. They'd rather destroy themselves trying to maintain the lie. The next day brought news from the prison. Ernest had tried to hang himself in his cell. Guards intervened in time, but the attempt earned him special watch, constant supervision, no privacy, no chance to plot or scheme. Edward visited the garage, bringing updates on Randall's progress in rehab. The therapists say he's finally facing his demons. Accepting responsibility. Good. Roman wiped grease from his hands. He was a pawn in their game. Pawns can be redeemed. Unlike some. Edward's face darkened. "Ernest's lawyer contacted me, trying to make a deal. Wanted to trade information about other corrupt businesses in town for a reduced sentence." "What did you tell him?" "That some offers come too late." Edward smiled grimly. "Besides, we already have that information, don't we?" Roman nodded. His network had mapped Willow Creek's underground economy, the bribes, the kickbacks, the secret deals. Each thread led back to people who'd supported Glinda and Ernest. thinking themselves safe in the shadows. Barbara brought coffee, catching the end of their conversation. "You're not stopping, are you? This goes beyond Glenda and Ernest. Corruption spreads like cancer." Roman took the offered cup. "You have to remove all of it, or it grows back stronger." Later that night, Roman reviewed his files. Names, dates, transactions, a web of betrayal and greed spanning years. Willow Creek's power players had chosen sides during his war with Glenda. Now they'd face the consequences of those choices. His phone buzzed. Glenda had checked herself out of the hospital against medical advice. Security cameras tracked her to the bus station, where she bought a one-way ticket out of state. "Should we follow her?" Perry asked. "No need." Roman pulled up another screen, showing offshore account transfers. "She's running on empty. No money, no friends, no options." Her confession guaranteed that. The news of her departure spread quickly through town. Some expressed relief, others disappointment at missing the next chapter of drama. But in Roman's garage, the mood remained focused. "One down," Barbara noted. "Many to go." Roman's voice carried absolute certainty. This town needed cleaning for a long time. Glenda and Ernest were just the beginning. The night wrapped around them, but Roman's work continued. In his office, files waited. Evidence of corruption, proof of betrayals, debts still to be collected. Willow Creek had witnessed his justice. Now they'd see his vengeance. Chapter 9. A New Beginning. The transformation of Roman's garage into a community center took weeks of careful planning. What began as a simple training program expanded into something larger. A place where Willow Creek's youth could learn trades, build futures, escape the cycles of corruption that had plagued their town. Barbara watched Roman instruct a group of teenagers in basic engine repair. His patience surprised her, though his standards remained exacting. "You make one mistake here," he told them, "it could cost someone's life. Precision matters. Attention matters. Everything you do has consequences." The lesson carried weight beyond mechanics. These kids knew Roman's reputation, understood the deeper message in his words. Tommy Chun, now Roman's official apprentice, helped demonstrate proper tool handling. His black eye had healed, but the memory of Ernest's thugs kept him focused, determined. "Mr. Hayden?" A young voice interrupted. "There's someone here to see you." Roman looked up to find Edward Albert in the doorway, accompanied by Randall. 90 days sober had changed the younger man. His eyes clearer, his stance steadier. "Class dismissed," Roman announced. Tommy supervised their cleanup. The students filed out, stealing glances at Randall. His story had become a cautionary tale in Willow Creek. The rich man's son brought low by bad choices and worse company. "You've done amazing things here," Randall said, surveying the converted space. "Dad told me, but seeing it—" "Why are you here?" "To apologize. To thank you." Randall met Roman's gaze. "You could have destroyed me completely. Instead, you gave me a chance to see the truth. Truth is neutral." Roman wiped his hands. "What you do with it determines your worth." Edward stepped forward. "We'd like to help fund the center's expansion. No strings, no control. Just support for something good in this town." Roman considered the offer. The Alberts' money could help more kids escape Willow Creek's darker influences. But trust, once broken, required more than good intentions to repair. "3 conditions," he said finally. "First, the center stays independent. Second, all financial transactions are transparent, publicly available. Third, you both take active roles in mentoring these kids. Show them there's more than one path to success." Agreed. Edward's relief was visible. "Though after recent events, I'm not sure we're the best role models. Redemption has value too." Roman's voice carried authority. "These kids need to see that change is possible. That choices matter." As they discussed details, Barbara monitored social media updates about Glenda. The former socialite had surfaced in another state, attempting to rebuild her life. But her confessions followed her, poisoning each new beginning. Ernest's situation proved equally grim. Prison had broken him completely. Reports described him as a shell, speaking to shadows, jumping at noise. Justice, it seemed, took many forms. The day ended with Roman and Barbara on his porch, their usual coffee replaced by wine. The garage-turned-community center stood quiet, waiting for tomorrow's students. "You've changed this town," Barbara observed, "not just by removing the rot, but by building something better." "Change isn't enough." Roman's voice remained hard. "They needed to learn. Actions have consequences. Betrayal carries a price. And now? Now we watch. We wait." He smiled, the expression carrying no warmth. "Some people in this town still haven't learned their lesson. They watched what happened to Glinda and Ernest but think they're smarter, safer." "You're not done," Barbara realized. "Justice isn't a moment. It's a process." Roman sipped his wine. The corrupt judges who helped Ernest, the business owners who backed Glinda, the politicians who looked the other way, they all made choices. Now they'll face the consequences. Max lifted his head, ears perking at approaching footsteps. Perry emerged from the darkness, his expression grim. "Got word from Zach," he reported. "Ernest didn't make it. Prison fight got out of hand. They're calling it self-defense, but—" Roman nodded, unsurprised. "And Glinda? Last seen boarding a bus to Mexico. No money, no contacts, no future." Perry settled into a chair. "She tried selling her story to some tabloids, but your evidence killed any credibility she had." The news rippled through Willow Creek over the next few days. Ernest's death marked the end of an era. No more illegal poker games. No more backroom deals in smoky bars. His corrupt empire crumbled, leaving space for honest businesses to thrive. Roman's community center flourished in the changing atmosphere. More kids arrived each week, drawn by the promise of practical skills and straight talk. Tommy Chin's success story inspired others, the boy who stood up to corruption and found a better path. Edward and Randall kept their word, funding expansions while maintaining transparency. The center added computer labs, welding stations, even a small business development program. Each addition served Roman's larger purpose, giving Willow Creek's youth alternatives to the old corrupt systems. Barbara's role evolved too. She started teaching business management classes, sharing her experience running the diner. Her story of escaping an abusive relationship resonated with students facing their own struggles. "They trust you," Roman observed one evening, watching her lock up the center. "They trust what we're building here." She met his gaze. "A place where honesty matters more than schemes, where hard work beats manipulation, and where betrayal carries consequences," he added, his voice hard. "Never forget that part." The transformation of Willow Creek continued. Roman's reputation grew beyond the town borders. The mechanic who broke corruption's grip, who taught harsh lessons about loyalty and consequences. Some called him ruthless, others called him necessary. No one called him weak. 1 year after Glinda's departure, Roman stood in his upgraded garage bay, supervising Tommy's first solo engine rebuild. The boy's hands moved with growing confidence, applying lessons learned through months of strict training. "Perfect timing on the torque wrench," Roman noted. "You're learning. Had a good teacher." Tommy tightened the last bolt. "Someone who showed me the right way matters more than the easy way." Outside, Barbara's business class was graduating their first round of students. Each graduate had developed a solid plan for their future, legitimate businesses built on skill and integrity rather than shortcuts and schemes. Perry joined Roman as they watched the ceremony. "Town's different now. Cleaner. Straighter." Because they learned. Roman's expression remained stern. Some through observation, others through direct experience. But they all learned. Later that night, Roman reviewed his remaining files. A few loose ends still needed attention. Corrupt officials who'd enabled Glinda and Ernest's schemes, businessmen who'd profited from their activities. Each would face their own reckoning, in time. Barbara found him at his desk, surrounded by evidence of ongoing investigations. "You're not stopping, are you? Would you respect me if I did?" He met her gaze. "Corruption doesn't end just because we caught 2 players. It takes constant vigilance, constant consequences. The town knows that now." She touched his shoulder. "Thanks to you, they understand what happens when they betray trust, when they choose greed over integrity." Roman closed his laptop, but his mind continued plotting. Willow Creek had changed, but human nature remained constant. Someone would always test the boundaries, always think themselves exempt from consequences. And Roman would be waiting, ready to teach them otherwise. His garage-turned-community center stood as both promise and warning, a place where honest work was rewarded and betrayal was punished, where lessons, once taught, were never forgotten. The night settled around them, but Roman's work continued. In his office, files waited, evidence of corruption, proof of betrayals, debts still to be collected. Willow Creek had witnessed his justice. Now they'd live with his legacy. Max patted over, sensing his master's resolute mood. Roman scratched behind the dog's ears, his voice carrying absolute certainty. Some lessons take time to sink in, but they always sink in eventually. Barbara nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. Roman hadn't just changed their town. He'd reshaped its very foundation. Through calculated revenge and relentless justice, he'd created something new. A community where actions had consequences, where betrayal carried a price, and where weakness was no longer mistaken for kindness. The story of Roman Hayden, the mechanic who broke corruption's grip on Willow Creek, would be told for years to come. But for Roman himself, the story wasn't over. It never would be. Justice, like the engines he rebuilt, required constant maintenance, constant vigilance, and an unwavering commitment to getting things right. And Roman Hayden never left a job unfinished. Epilogue. 10 years later, Roman Hayden stood at the window of his expanded enterprise, watching students file into the Willow Creek Technical Institute, formerly his garage, now a state-accredited trade school. The modest building had grown into a sprawling campus, teaching everything from automotive repair to business management. His reputation for excellence and uncompromising standards attracted students from 3 neighboring states. Mr. Hayden? Tommy Chin's voice carried the confidence of a man who'd learned from the best. At 27, he managed the automotive program, maintaining Roman's exacting standards. The new equipment for the Advanced Diagnostics Lab arrived. Any issues with the installation? None. Tommy smiled slightly. I made sure they followed your specifications exactly. Nobody wants to face your disappointment. Roman nodded, recognizing the deeper meaning. His influence extended far beyond education now. Willow Creek had transformed under his watchful eye, becoming a model of integrity in a region once known for corruption. The lesson he'd taught through Glenda and Ernest's destruction had sparked a lasting change. Barbara entered his office, carrying financial reports. Their relationship had evolved over the years, partners in business and life, bound by shared experiences and understanding. She'd expanded her diner into a successful chain, teaching business ethics alongside practical management. Quarterly numbers are in, she reported. The Institute's placement rate remains at 98%. Employers know our graduates don't cut corners. And the foundation? Barbara pulled up another report on her tablet. The Hayden Foundation, established 5 years ago, provided scholarships and support for victims of domestic abuse and financial fraud. It served as both redemption and reminder, funding new beginnings while ensuring no one forgot the consequences of betrayal. We've helped 32 families this quarter. 2 of them were special cases. Roman understood immediately. Special cases meant victims of schemes similar to Glenda's old cons. Even after a decade, his network tracked reports of financial predators, ensuring swift justice for those who preyed on the vulnerable. Perry Hansen's arrival interrupted their discussion. Age had silvered his hair, but his loyalty remained unchanged. As head of security for both the Institute and the Foundation, he maintained Roman's standards of vigilance. Got some news you'll want to hear, Perry said, closing the office door. Remember Maria Santos? She was asking about Glenda last week. The reporter? Barbara frowned. I thought she'd given up on that story. She found her. Perry placed a file on Roman's desk. In Mexico City, living under the name Elena Torres, running small cons on tourists. Until last month, Roman opened the file, studying the police report. What happened? She tried scamming the wrong person. Local cartel boss's nephew. Perry's expression was grim. They found her in the harbor 3 days later. Silence filled the office as they absorbed the news. Glenda's end seemed fitting, destroyed by the same predatory instincts that had driven her from Willow Creek. And Randall? Roman asked, though he already knew. Still doing well. Barbara pulled up another report. The rehabilitation center he founded is expanding to a 3rd location. Edward's pride in him is obvious. The Alberts had kept their word over the years. Randall's recovery became a mission to help others, while Edward's support of the Technical Institute never wavered. Their redemption proved that some people could learn from others' mistakes. A knock at the door announced Zach Ramsey's arrival. The former hacker had parlayed his skills into a legitimate cybersecurity firm, but he still maintained Roman's surveillance network. "Got those background checks you wanted," Zach reported. "3 applicants for the new instructor positions. One has interesting connections." Roman reviewed the files on Zach's tablet. Former associate of Ernest's operation? His nephew, actually, trying to infiltrate the institute, probably looking for revenge. Deny the application, Roman decided. Send him our standard message. The standard message had become legendary in certain circles, a detailed dossier of the applicant's past activities, accompanied by a clear warning about consequences. Few needed a second reminder. Later that afternoon, Roman walked the institute's grounds with Barbara. Students nodded respectfully as they passed, understanding that their education carried more than technical knowledge. Each graduate left with a deep appreciation for integrity, consequences, and the price of betrayal. "Sometimes I wonder," Barbara mused, "if they understand the full story. How this all started. They understand enough." Roman's voice carried the same steel it had a decade ago. "They see the results. That's what matters." The Institute's walls held subtle reminders. A plaque dedicated to those who learned the hard way bore no names but carried clear meaning. The ethics classroom displayed newspaper clippings about corruption's consequences, including carefully selected stories about Glinda and Ernest's downfall. Their walk took them past the memorial garden, funded by the Alberts. Edward, now in his 80s, often sat there, sharing stories with students about redemption's cost. His own story, choosing truth over family pride, had become part of the Institute's curriculum. "Ms. Snow?" A student approached Barbara. "Could I ask about the scholarship program?" Barbara recognized the signs. Another victim seeking escape from an abusive situation. "Come to my office. We'll talk." Roman watched them go, remembering Barbara's own journey from victim to survivor to mentor. The foundation prioritized such cases, ensuring that those who sought honest change found support. Tommy joined him, carrying maintenance reports. "You heard about Glinda?" "Yes." Some of the older staff were talking about it, wondering if you'd... Tommy hesitated. "If I'd what?" "Feel satisfied now, knowing she's gone." Roman turned to his protege, his expression unchanging. "Justice isn't about satisfaction, Tommy. It's about consequences. She made her choices, right until the end." The day wound down, but the Institute hummed with activity. Evening classes attracted working adults seeking better futures. Each student represented another chance to reinforce the lessons Roman had taught Willow Creek through example and retribution. In his private office, Roman reviewed security footage from cameras across town. Old habits died hard, and vigilance had kept Willow Creek clean. His network identified potential threats before they took root, ensuring the town's transformation remained permanent. Perry's evening report brought news of another attempted incursion. Someone connected to Ernest's old operation trying to restart the illegal gambling scene. The response was swift and final. By morning, they'd be gone, carrying fresh understanding of Roman's lingering influence. Barbara found him there, still working as night fell. "Dinner at home?" "I invited Tommy and his family." Roman nodded, shutting down his systems. Their house, expanded but still on the outskirts of town, remained a testament to his beliefs. No flashy displays of wealth, just solid construction and strategic positioning. Max's descendants patrolled the grounds, carrying on their predecessors' vigilance. Over dinner, Tommy shared news about his latest project, a scholarship program specifically for students from families impacted by financial fraud. The foundation would provide funding, turning victims' experiences into opportunities for change. "The applications are already coming in," Tommy explained. "People who lost everything to schemes like Glinda's, looking for a fresh start. Screen them carefully," Roman instructed. "Some people learn from experience. Others just seek new hunting grounds." The conversation turned to the Institute's future. Plans for expansion, new programs, stronger connections with legitimate businesses. Each development reinforced Roman's vision, a community built on skill and integrity where corruption found no purchase. Later, alone with Barbara on their porch, Roman reflected on the decade's changes. Willow Creek had become unrecognizable to outsiders who remembered its corrupt past. The transformation went beyond surface appearances, reaching into the town's very character. Maria Santos wants an interview, Barbara mentioned, about Glenda, about the changes here. She's convinced there's a bigger story. There is. Roman's voice carried absolute certainty. But it's not about Glenda, or Ernest, or even revenge. It's about consequences. About teaching people that actions carry price tags they can't escape. The night deepened around them, but lights still burned at the institute. Students working late, learning lessons that went beyond textbooks. Each graduate carried part of Roman's legacy, not just technical skills, but understanding of justice's cost. Any regrets? Barbara asked, though she knew the answer. None. Roman's expression remained firm. Everything I've built, everything I've taught. It all started with showing them what happens when they mistake kindness for weakness. That lesson needed to be taught. It still needs teaching. In his office at home, files still waited. New threats to monitor, potential problems to address, justice to maintain. Roman's work would never end, but his impact would outlive him. Willow Creek stood as proof that one man's revenge could forge a lasting legacy of change. The Technical Institute would continue growing, spreading his influence through each graduate. The foundation would keep supporting those seeking honest paths. And Roman's reputation would ensure that anyone considering corruption's path remembered Glenda's fate, Ernest's downfall, and the mechanic who'd engineered their destruction. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new attempts to test his resolve. But Roman Hayden remained unchanged, the man who'd turned personal revenge into public redemption, who'd proved that justice served cold could forge a better future. In Willow Creek, his name had become both promise and warning. The town had learned its lesson well. Actions have consequences, betrayal carries a price, and some debts can only be paid in full. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.